Welcome back to part 2 of our imposition and layout chapter in Print 101. This is Professor Ben Hewitt again. In case you're not watching these back to back, I introduce myself every time. It must be getting boring if you do watch it back to back, and by now you know to skip the first 30 seconds or so, don't you? So, folded signatures. We were just talking about, or if you've watched this a day or before, we're coming back to the idea of a folded signature. A signature is a large sheet of paper folded multiple times to make multiple sheets or pages out of one sheet. You'll then trim off the edges at the very end when it's all bound together. Here's the different parts. Starting at the top, the head is the top of the page. The foot is the bottom of the page. Not too hard. The thumb edge is the part of the book you would open up with your thumb while you're reading through it. I hope it's a funny side note. But side note on that, back when I was in high school and was a band geek playing trombone, a lot of my books had a green stain on the thumb edge because I would pick up brass tarnish from my instruments. And then when I read my books, I would be leaving a little bit of that patina on the paper. So a lot of my books, and anybody who read books in the back of orchestra while the strings were playing, well, yeah, we all left that green thumb mark because we were all playing brass instruments. Anyways, that's the thumb edge. Hopefully my dumb stories help you remember these things. The thumb edge can also be the open edge, but there's a closed edge as well. Depending on the number of folds you do, different parts will be closed off, including especially the head. Guaranteed the head is closed. Typically, the thumb edge also has some pages closed. Opposite the thumb edge is the gutter edge, also known as the saddle. And you can have a signature number or mark on the edge there to help the bindery know which order to put them together. Because while you might saddle stitch, that means staple, but more politely. You might saddle stitch a single signature to make a magazine or a book with not too many pages. Typically speaking, you're going to be putting multiples of these together to make a larger book. So having a number guide that tells you what number it is, what order to put it in, really helps. There was one time when I was young and reading Tom Clancy spy novels in my youth when I was reading a book that made no sense. I was reading in the middle of a sentence and suddenly the sentence finished, but the topic changed. We went from being in the jungles of Colombia on this military raid of some drug compound. Suddenly we were in a prison in the Midwest and I just didn't understand what was going on. When I looked more closely and figured out by the page numbers, a signature had been put in out of order. So it jumped from like page 150 to page 400. And then like 50 pages later, jumped back to page 101. Anyways, once I figured that out and I read it in the correct order, the book made a lot more sense. So it's important to get your signatures in the right order or entire sections of a book will be in the wrong place. The folio, Italian name for page number, lets you know which page number of the document you're on. And it doesn't always start with 1 at the beginning of the book. You might have noticed many start with Roman numerals and pre-chapter chapters or letters and other things instead. Skipping those, we just talked about those. Types of imposition. There are different ways to impose. You can only print, unwrecking my language here. If you only print on one side of a final sheet, that's called one-up or sheetwise. You're only printing one side of one sheet. Large posters are done this way because you can only fit one large poster on a sheet. But if you're doing anything smaller than a large poster, you're wasting everybody's time, energy, and money by printing only one thing on a sheet. You should always try to get more out of your sheets. Sheetwise. If you print two sides on separate flats. So sheetwise means you're printing the front on one press and then you print a second plate to make the second side. And there's something called the gripper edge, which is the side that gets gripped by the press when it goes through getting printed. Here's a picture of sheetwise layouts. These are two separate sheets of print plate on the left and on the right, and the X's show which side goes to the press first. The grippers pull through. So that was sheetwise. Work and turn and work and tumble are two types of very related but slightly different forms of imposition. Work and turn and work and tumble both are ways of printing the front and the back on the same printing plate. The difference between them is the direction you flip it when you flip it from the front to the back. Work and turn flips side to side, so you keep the same gripper. So the machine will grab the same edge of the paper both times when it goes through, but you'll flip side to side around that point when it goes through. Work and tumble flips end over end and changes gripper when it prints front and back. And in both cases, work and turn and work and tumble allows you to print the front and the back on the same printing plate. So you print the sheets of paper one time, you flip them over and you print the back sides, and it prints using one plate, two sides. So now we're going to talk a little bit about, grippers. We were talking about grippers and how this works. So the stripper allows for gripper room. The grippers on here, I'll try to find another video to give you showing you what grippers do, though we will talk more about them when we reach the chapter on offset presses. But the gripper on an offset press is what holds a piece of paper. It's little metal fingers. From small presses, they're almost like little tiny paper clips that grab onto the paper, to huge presses where there are large robotic hands that clamp down, or clamps that grab onto the end of the paper to pull large sheets through. It depends on the size of the sheet that the press can handle as to how big and how strong those things are. Sorry about that. My daughter had some important questions for me. I had to talk to her, but we're back. So the gripper will grab the sheet and pull it through. One of the things about having grippers is, in order to accommodate the grippers, the actual cylinders that print on the press have to have a gap to allow the gripper to go through so they don't just smash into the gripper. So that means that the amount of space you're allowed to use for a plate has to accommodate the gripper, and the paper also can't be printed on the gripper. Let's talk quality control devices. Quality control devices are little printing marks that you've probably seen your whole life and not realized what they are. These are little tiny targets and color bars that help us know if things are printing correctly and help us control the print job as it's coming off the press by adjusting ink levels and making sure that all things are working the way they should. This is a star target. You might see these on packaging. If you open up a cereal box and look under the flaps on the bottom, sometimes you can see the targets that they printed on their sheets to help the printers know if they're getting the colors correct. The star target lets you see if the ink is smearing or slurring. If you can see the little lines going all the way into the middle or very nearly, you know that you're getting a clean print. If it looks like a solid square, you have some pretty bad slurring going on. There are other gauges you can use. You can use a grayscale to check your plate exposure next to. You can use a dot gain scale to make sure that your halftone dots aren't getting too much larger when you're printing. Slur gauges, color gauges, there's lots of different things you can use. Here's another one. Up at the top of this sheet here, you can see the color bars. The color bars will have full coverage as well as partial halftone coverage of the colors of ink being printed on that job. Typically, it'll be CMYK for the three primaries and black of printing for color printing. And if you have any spot colors, they will be present as well. Some color bars have specific color mixes of various amounts of the different colors on top of each other that also want to be tested for color control. Now, electronic imposition and stripping is what we do using InDesign. That means that instead of physically cutting out with an X-Acto knife and using UV tape or rubber cement, I do miss the smell of rubber cement from growing up. Yeah, no guffawing, no guffawing. Anyways, I was used to the smells of an art print lab around my house and around visiting my parents' workplaces. Anyways, flats are no longer done mechanically. They're done computer-wise. And typically, you no longer even need to make a flat. You need to make a print file, a computer file like a flat that will then be exposed using a controlled laser device to directly expose the plates rather than having a film intermediary to help you do your plate exposure. Imposition software will automatically put things in place for you. It will take the number of pages that you want and automatically generate the numbers of signatures necessary and put the pages in the correct locations and impositions, and orientations. Now, when we in our class get to the part where we're going to do a digital layout using, I can't remember the name of the word, we're going to make a signature for multi-pages, we are going to do that manually in InDesign. So you don't get the easy one click until you understand what it is your one click is doing for you. You can define all the different things you're going to need to. You can compensate for creep. You can allow the different amounts of margin, binding methods, how much bleed's going to be necessary. 1/8 of an inch. That's standard, 1/8 of an inch. So imposition software is doing this for us and with us. It means it will automatically put this stuff together. And you can impose, preview, edit, proof, color separate, and print in a single application. Rather than having multiple people and multiple departments in a print shop, it's all being done on a single computer by a single person. Welcome to the future, I guess. Let's talk about the PDF, the portable document format. So first off, good news on the PDFs. If you want to say PDF file, you can and not be silly, because the F is for format. It's not an ATM machine here. It's a portable document format. Hooray! The PDF is now the accepted replacement of the flat. The PDF is the best computer file for printing, and it has been for a long time, and it will continue to be so for a long time for a couple reasons. One, PDFs were not designed for printing, but they were designed by printing. When Adobe came up with a PDF, their goal was to create the perfect interoffice memo, which is why I gave you the Office Space scene to explain what PDFs were originally doing. With early computer networks, and the first places they appeared were inside office buildings inside specific businesses. And they were being used to send primitive forms of email back and forth so that the boss from his office could send out a message telling everyone to put a cover on their TPS reports. To make sure everybody was getting these memos and to save on paper and time of people printing them and delivering them, Adobe came up with the idea of the PDF. What if you made a document that you could send from computer to computer quickly, efficiently, and stably? As you might know, if you ever send a Microsoft Word file from one computer to another, and you try to reopen it over there, when you open it up, the next computer interprets what it is and rebuilds the file from the ground up, and you might get weird page breaks. Your font size and orientation may change slightly. Your pictures may move around. It's not nailed down as much as I'd like. It's one of the reasons I say so many bad things about that program. It's not bad as a typewriter, but when you try to do layout in Word, it doesn't really preserve your layout very well. But PDFs, in order to create this system of interoffice memos, Adobe looked to a bit of coding, which at the time was the best way, still kind of is, was the only way and the best way of defining page layouts so that you could keep a page looking the same on every computer. They looked to early digital printing and the computer language called PostScript. PostScript is the secret love language between computers and digital printers and or digital plate makers. It's a description to the printer of exactly what goes where and at what size that the printer is able to produce exactly what the computer designed. A PDF is a way of taking that information and organizing it and streamlining it so it can easily and quickly be made on a computer and sent to another computer. So it's not much of an accident when somebody got peanut butter on their chocolate, or did they get chocolate on their peanut butter, and realized that PDFs were great for printing, because they are basically a more advanced version of the language printers were already used to. Nowadays, PDFs are the way to go. PDFs are the primary print file that most people want. Every once in a while, there's a print shop that has a specific requirement that's non-PDF, but for the most part, it's a PDF all the way down, guys. Also, there's something called a job ticket. Sometimes my assignments look like this. They can be done digitally as another file, like a JDF or other specific thing, but job tickets are a way of maintaining the information related to a job. They carry the specifications, including what it's supposed to look like, what kind of paper it's printed on, how it's being bound, how many are being done, when it's due, all that kind of information that helps you keep your print shop organized goes along the job with a job ticket. And that is a way of keeping everyone on the same schedule and on the same page, so to speak, about what's going on. Anyways, that is it for our talk on imposition and layout. I hope it was informative. I'm sorry if it was not my best work ever. They can't all be winners, right? But anyways, do watch the other video on the folding dummy and give that a try yourself. Folding dummies are a very important and very valuable tool that will help you develop your designs and your layouts.